Howdy folks, happy Sunday. I hope you are doing fantastic today. What's up with that? What is going on here? I have no idea. Hopefully you're doing fantastic today. Welcome to the broadcast. Uh, we have a very interesting topic today, and I'd imagine YouTube's probably going to heavily censor it. So I don't know if anyone will even show up today because of that. So we shall see. We shall see. But anyway, we have our tea here. It is very, very hot, and we have our non-Christmas mouse, and we have our Christmas mouse here. Boy, I'm gonna have to take that hat off and wear that hat again. He may not be too happy with that, but we're gonna have to do it. We're gonna have to do it. Let's take his hat. Let's take his hat and wear his hat. There we go. It doesn't fit on my large hat. There you go. Ugh. It's Christmas time again. Okay. We did the best we possibly could. There. It's not as comfortable as it was last time. Last time it was very comfortable. Now it's just, boy, you may have to put your hat back on. I may not like it. Yeah, there you go. He's just gonna put his hat back on because I'm not gonna like it too much. Okay. All right. So why don't we go ahead and start to celebrate Christmas time with these mice here? There you go. Boy, let's get you in the frame. Let's get you in the frame, making sure that you're fully visible here. There you go. Look how cute. You gotta position that just right, boy. And then the other one would just kind of can't really place him anywhere without being a bit distracted here. There you go. How cute are you? How cute. Anyway, so our topic that we'll be talking about today, as I mentioned, YouTube probably will not show this to anyone or promote it to anyone, and no one's probably going to see it. But regardless, this is, YouTube has made some changes. But, on Friday we talked about, some of this exploitation that people do, not just with YouTube. That was one of the main things that we discussed, but also plenty of other platforms where people exploit mental health conditions or eating disorders specifically. So that can be, I would say it was certainly a much bigger problem some time ago, where you would see people promoted that would, heavily promote these sort of eating disorders, whether it be, on the low end, on the high end. And you still have content like that. You still have people who are gaining a lot of popularity and fame by doing things, especially when it comes to, I would say, more so the overeating aspect. Not necessarily with YouTube as much anymore, but with other platforms for sure. You have those sort of things that seem to be heavily favored, where a lot of people are watching someone just binge eat so much food. I don't personally understand that. I don't know what the appeal is of that. I don't know why people would watch that sort of content unless you see it is a very shocking, like it's for like shock value a lot of times is what it tends to be. So that is where a lot of these people start to realize some sort of fame that they have there, and then they end up having to go more and more extreme to get more and more viewers to come and follow them and watch their content. Because when you're talking about social media and talking about the things that people do for some sort of fame and money and popularity. They have to just keep going more and more extreme with the things that they're doing in order to actually attract the viewership. So if someone does the same thing so many times, they're not going to really grow at all. It's like they're going to remain stagnant and just no one's really going to watch. But if you keep upping what your goals are when it comes to what you're eating or how unhealthy it is, all this other stuff, you're going to keep the viewers keep coming back. And that's a major problem, because these people who may start off not necessarily the most unhealthy, but not really healthy to begin with anyway, and they start to exploit that condition, they start to see where their viewers are, even if it's haters, even if it's people who say a bunch of negative, hateful things, that is still engagement. That's still promoting the idea that this is how it should be. This is how you get attention. Even if it's negative attention, these people are gaining attention. They're gaining followers. They're gaining viewers. They're gaining a bunch of attention and eyes on them, even if it's negative in nature. And as a result, they're going to keep doing something for shock value that gets more and more extreme. So I'm sure we can probably think of, if you've seen any of these people online, I'm not going to name any sort of names, but I can think of two people just off the top of my head from completely opposite spectrums when it comes to not really eating anything to just overeating entirely. So, and there's everything else in between there. There's so many other people, there's just, I'm just thinking of a few other things here and there. And I'm just kind of like, I'm not going to give attention to those sort of people. I have seen some of their content before. I've seen this, and I'm just like, I'm just not going to engage with it. I'm not going to watch it. I'm not going to really look at it. But sometimes, you end up seeing it there, and it's like, okay, you're just doing it for shock value at this point. And that's what the whole goal of all of that is, for that shock value. Like, look what we can do here to shock the viewers, to get attention, to get money and fame. And as I said, YouTube, several years ago, they did implement a policy that would help drive people away from that sort of content. So certainly it has helped a little bit, I would say. And that specifically being, they no longer are able to monetize videos regarding promoting any sort of eating disorder, whether that be, on the low end or on the high end, that sort of stuff. Even when I made a video many, many years ago about eating disorders, that was actually age restricted. That may be what this video ends up becoming. I don't know. I'm not talking about anything specifically. Well, I mean, kind of, but it could very, very, very well be age restricted. And that could very well be why YouTube will not promote this sort of video. So yeah, I heavily doubt that anyone will even really hear the content the stuff that I'm saying here, because of that, the type of nature of this content. But people may find it after the fact. I don't know. But regardless, I just find that very, very interesting. Other platforms, I don't have experience with using some of these other social media platforms. I really don't use social media. But if we look at some of these other platforms of what people do on there, I would say it's much more extreme than what happens on YouTube, for sure. Much more extreme. So on YouTube, as I mentioned, they have implemented some things to help combat some of that, promotion of eating disorders. On other platforms, I feel as though there is still that exaggeration of viewership and attention that these people are getting, who are, oh look, I'm gonna eat for breakfast. This is what a fat person eats for breakfast, and they have 10 pizzas and chicken wings, all this other stuff. It's like, okay, 2 liters of soda, all this other stuff. And it's like, these people, they would get millions of attention, eyes on on them. And it is a shame. It really is a shame because, as we talked about on Friday, when it came with the type of food that most people are eating, especially in the United States. If you look at the ingredients, a lot of the food, it's very, 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 very bad quality ingredient to the point where you're not really eating any sort of food. You're basically eating a bunch of toxic garbage. So that is a major problem. And that's one of the reasons why these people are, for one, being so addicted to these sorts of foods to begin with. And then number two, why they have gained so much weight as quickly as they have. Because of just the ingredients that are in the food that they're eating. So it really is a shame. It really is a shame. But the thing is, people will not put a lot of people will not put two and two together. They will not think that what they're eating is causing their health problems. I would say it is pretty clear that if you look at that information, if you look at what you're eating, it's very, very clear that what you're eating is not the healthiest thing, and it's causing a lot of those health problems. However, a lot of people don't really think like that, shall we say. They don't want to admit the fact that the food that they're eating is causing health problems. And it's a shame. It really is a shame. But, if more and more people start to become aware of that, I think there can be a lot of change when it comes to dietary preferences and being able to be healthy. Now, I would like to talk a little bit about my own experience here as well, because, people over the years, they've posted comments, just ridiculous things, accusing me, saying that I have an eating disorder, all this other stuff, and whatever. These people don't know me, and I just kind of laugh at that, because it's like, I'm not promoting any sort of dietary lifestyle. I'm not telling you what to eat or how to eat or how much to eat. I don't really care what you do, because that is your decision to do that. I'm just making you aware, hey, maybe what you should be eating, you should be aware of what you're putting into your body, first of all. But as I said, people don't really want to hear that. So they will blame me and say that, well, you're the one with the eating disorder. You don't, or some of the comments I've seen, I was like, you don't look well. Have you been eating? And I'm just like, I don't even engage with those sort of comments, because it's mostly just a bunch of nonsense. Because these people don't live my life. These people don't know the struggle it is for me to gain any sort of weight whatsoever. So they don't understand that sort of struggle, and I'm not going to bother to sit here and explain it to them, because to them, that would not make sense. If I told them all these sorts of things, like, oh, when I eat this, I lose weight, or eating certain things here and there causes health issues, so I have to avoid those certain things. Oh, I eat this amount of food, I eat all this sort of stuff, I probably eat more than you eat. You can just eat a little tiny salad and probably gain weight, whereas I can eat a whole bunch of stuff and I will lose weight. To them, they were like, yeah, right, that doesn't make any sort of sense. Because I don't think it does make much of any sense. But that's just how my body is. So, to me, it's like, I personally have never struggled with any sort of eating disorder, and I'm very thankful for that, because that was not a way that I coped with any of my problems. Because when you break it down, when you drill down to what the whole purpose of why someone has an eating disorder, when it comes step away from the whole social media aspect, if people don't even expose that sort of stuff online, it's often because that's a way for them to cope with some sort of problem that they have within their life. So what sort of problem are we talking about here? There can be any sort of traumatic incidents that someone has encountered in the past that have made them do that sort of activity, whether it be not eat all that much or overindulge in food. It could be one of those scenarios where they feel as though they don't have enough, or other people are taking things from them, so they have to just try to get as much as they possibly can, maybe again according to their upbringing. It could be any number of things that have happened to them during childhood that is abusive situations that have led them to this path of destruction, basically, of their body via the food that they consume or don't consume. And I think the main thing is when people exploit that online, they're exploiting their mental health condition for the world to see. It's really no different than other people who exploit other mental health conditions that they have online. Whether it be, the list is long of mental health problems that people have that they can potentially exploit, because the whole thing with the internet is that it makes people want to get attention. It makes them want to seek fame. It makes them want other people to become aware of them so that they can gain viewership and attention and feel as though they are better. And as we talked about before, usually these type of people who are going for this sort of attention, they would do more and more extreme things in order to keep that attention and to grow more. And when it comes to something that is very self-destructive, such as food that you're eating, that can be extremely, extremely bad. I mean, I can even go so far as to talk about, like people who do food challenges. I am not one who encourages or likes the idea of food challenges, because that to me is a very unnatural and self-destructive way that someone is gaining attention. It's like, oh, I'm going to eat all this sort of food, but you're not going to see what happens behind the scenes. You're not going to see all that sort of stuff. Or maybe they do talk about it, but most people, I would say, who are going to be doing those sorts of things, they may not be as disciplined to work off the weight if they're doing it in a natural way or anything else along those lines. So it's a very self-destructive process by which a lot of these people are going about exposing their mental health conditions online. Now, I can kind of go back to my own experience with this a little bit when it comes to not the eating disorders, but when I first started making videos a decade ago, people were saying, just based on me sharing my experiences, that I was exploiting my mental health condition for who knows what exactly, who knows what. Because I was sharing something about myself, that I was exploiting it, because apparently real people with these conditions don't talk about these things, or that they're not aware of certain things, or that they don't really engage with certain things here and there. So it's interesting, because these sort of people made the assumption that I was exploiting an aspect of myself. And from where I was coming from, I was being very vulnerable by sharing an aspect of myself. And it was something that was apparently very popular. And I saw other people around the same time doing, similar sort of stuff where they talked about certain things and they, did certain things that were similar in nature to the type of content that I made back in the day. However, I would notice with those people, I was on the path to talking about how do I deal with these situations? How do I heal from them? Here's my healing journey. If you look back at my early videos and just kind of watch my progress, you can see how I have grown and how I have improved myself tremendously to the point where a lot of those past issues no longer affect me really at all. Like, I talked heavily about trauma and abuse that I endured. I talked about paranoia that I had and being very suspicious here and there. All this other stuff that at this point I have basically overcome most of those problems. So the very fact that I can say that, people will deny that that's even possible, but I have shown my journey throughout that. However, let's just say that there's been other people who've made content like that, who have talked about these sort of things that I have talked about, who have made videos, similar to what I have discussed as well. And they just keep going with the stuff that's getting them attention and views, if you ever notice that. It's like, okay, this is what we're going to focus on. This is what we're going to talk about. And we're going to talk about the destructive ways of how it impacts that person's life. How this happens, how that happens. How do you, maybe there is some helpful content here and there, like how do you deal with this a little bit, how do you deal with that? But it's so focused on this one little tight area to the point where that consumes their every thought and action. And that's a major problem, because when you're specifically talking about mental health conditions, if that's all you focus on and how you're negatively impacted by certain situations in your life, then all you're going to do is continuously attract a lot of these negative situations to you. And you're never going to be able to get to a healing spot, at least not in any sort of timely manner, because you realize the moment you heal from this condition, or that you get to a point where you can no longer talk about certain topics, you can no longer, bring up certain things, like if people have questions about this condition that you have, you can no longer answer those questions because you're no longer struggling with the condition. Then you realize that your viewership is basically gone at that point. So it ends up trapping you. It ends up trapping these people who are still there, who are still dealing with these problems, because they refuse to be able to move on to something that's going to help them or to heal them, because they will feel as though they are missing out on that viewership, on that attention. And that's something that social media does. So much like what we said about the eating conditions, eating disorders here and there, if people are doing all these things and they just go over the top more and more to get more and more viewership, well, what happens if they start to change some things here and there? Like, I'm going to eat something healthy. It's like, that doesn't get any views. They've built up their whole personality and their whole reality based on their social media presence, that they no longer know who they are. All they know is, this is what I must do to get viewers. This is what I must do to get the likes, the clicks, the ad revenue, the sponsors, all that sort of stuff. Whereas from my personal viewpoint, I was all about, here is what I'm talking about that I have dealt with in my life. Here is my personal experiences with this. And here are some things that I have done to be able to help me. And here's maybe some things that you can do to help you, so that you can overcome these problems and not have to deal with them in your life. But most people don't want to think like that. Now, do they? Mm-mm. Well, folks, as we can see, YouTube certainly has done a number on our live stream. We have no one here whatsoever. So I think with that, I think we may close it off relatively early today. I have gotten out everything I could possibly say here. I think primarily because, YouTube will block this sort of information. YouTube will be like, oh, this person's talking about controversial, sensitive information. We will make sure that no one sees it. And that's exactly what YouTube does. Despite the fact that this is helpful information, isn't it? It's helpful information. It is. And we have Gigi here with us. Hello, Gigi. I was friends with a mentally ill woman, didn't know how bad it was until after about 3 or 4 years. Her lying was out of control. The final straw was when I found out she was sleeping with a married... Oh, okay. Yeah, If you are friends with someone who has some sort of mental illness, it's certainly a bit harder. The friendship, the relationship can be a lot harder, especially with people who deal with some sort of personality disorder, or that they're very untrusting of you, or that they have one of the classic things when it comes to destructive relationships, destructive friendships, is if you have a friend who is generally, it's most of the time a female, but the female has um, borderline personality disorder, which is often confused for bipolar disorder. So they are different. There can be some overlap there, but a lot of times when it comes to borderline personality disorder, it is mostly women who do have it as opposed to men. Men usually, I guess their one is going to be more narcissistic personality disorder, as opposed to women would have more borderline personality disorder. Of course, there's overlap. There can be women with narcissism and men with borderline, but it tends to be more women who have borderline as opposed to men, is basically what I'm trying to say. So these would be people who can be highly emotional, reactive. These are people who will just be very self-destructive even with their relationships. Like, I love you one minute and I hate you the next minute, and then they're back to loving you again. It's all over the place. And I think, it's very hard to be friends with people like that. I would say it's very, very hard. So for the most part, it's like I just try to keep friends in my life that are just stable and try to lift me up as opposed to bring me down. And it's some, you there over the years I've had to, not be friends with certain people because I get to a point where it's like all the person's doing is just bringing me down at that point. So, oh, boy, did you have anything you wanted to say? No, ladies, I just waiting for Christmas. Yes. No, boy, that is him who's waiting for Christmas. Oh yeah. Boys, you seem kind of strange today. Hmm. There you go. Anyway, boys and ladies, this lady lizard thinks she's going to head off now because she said everything that she can possibly say, and YouTube has like destroyed her video and her channel and made it like impossible for anyone to find like anything. So she's going to head off now because she's going to go in the corner and sniff my feet. That's right, boy. I'm actually not going to do that, but I will if you want me to, boy. I will. Anyway. Bye, guys. Yeah, we're gonna head off early. I think I've gotten everything out I needed to say here. It's a shame we didn't get really, too many people here. GG, thank you for commenting. But yeah, that was basically it. But thank you for that. With that, I will be live again next week with hopefully a not controversial topic, so YouTube can promote it better. YouTube, hello YouTube. Um, Yeah, it was just something else, something. But anyway, I will catch you all again very soon. So thank you all so very much. Hopefully this information was helpful to you. I would imagine after the stream, this video may be age restricted, but I don't know. At this moment, it doesn't appear to be. I don't know though. I don't know what's going to happen after the broadcast, but I shall see. I shall see in time. So y'all take care. Have a great one, and I will see you all again next. Sorry about that. I was closing it out too soon there. Next Sunday. Next Sunday will be our stream right before Christmas, so I guess I'll have to wear this Santa hat again. I will. So y'all take care, have a good one, and see you then.